Hey Woo lovers, it's Lee from straightwoo.com with the new moon and Virgo reading. But before we get stuck into that, I've got two announcements. One is a word from our sponsors. Quite literally, I joined Patreon at the end of August. I'll put links below if you want to check it out. And Patreon is simply a platform where folks like you that follow my work and like it and find some meaning or enjoyment from it, find a different way to support people like my good self. And I am on the razor's edge to meet my first Patreon goal, which is to bring back the written monthly astrology transits that I used to write, which were always really popular. I'm really excited about getting back to work, to write on those. So that's going on. And just a huge thank you to all my Patreon people already, because it's just so exciting and galvanizing to be doing stuff with you guys. Part two is unrelated to this new moon, but just sticking it in your ear here. On September 3rd, Venus went into the shadow of her retrograde. This is kind of the first moment that we start to see, and in the shadow, it's more subconscious, little themes and variations popping up around Venusian topics, love, luxuries, finery, beauty, art, connecting, intimacy, those kinds of things. She will go properly retrograde on October 5th, I believe, and then her retrograde is 42 days long. I'm going to be doing a Venus retrograde download to take you through the entire Venus retrograde period, what it's about, what it means that Venus is going to go from Scorpio and then to Libra, how those signs work with Venus, how they're going to be very different. There's going to be, as always with Straight Woo, a bit of myth involved in this journey. And then I'm going to take you through, by rising sign, Venus retrograde for you. So I'm going to put links to both of these things below. Patreon, see if you want to join up and start hanging out. Number two, Venus retrograde download. But now let's get to new moon in Virgo. First thing first, I like a new moon in Virgo. And part of the reason I think that is that for a few summers running, the new moon in Virgo ushers in this very grounded, pragmatic burst of energy after retrograde summer hell. And the way that the retrogrades have been stacking up for a few years going, the summertime, which we usually think like, oh, summertime, all the feel goods. This summer we had Mars retrograde, then a Mercury retrograde. We're already in the shadow of Venus retrograde. Saturn is just stationed direct. So that was also retrograde. So we had just like, it was kind of like trying to drive with the, one foot on the gas, one on the foot on the brake, or trying to get forward while always taking one step backwards. There's just kind of push-pull the entire summer. So we're on the other side of that now. Most of the retrogradeness is done. And I always feel like, God, even after the eclipses, because we had some really punchy eclipses midsummer, especially that one, ooh, Lord, the one in Aquarius. So Virgo is like the absolute, it's the place you want to enter after you've been in eclipse stroke retrograde hell. So what's Virgo about? What's the new moon in Virgo about? These are my thoughts. Something I shared in part with my Patreon people in our Patreon only Facebook group, is that I've been really thinking a lot recently about roots. My shaman is always saying that trees grow based on the roots. And that is, for me, I can see it in her work. I can see it in everything she's built because she has tremendous integrity. I have tried to follow that example as much as I could. I'm Aries, so I get real impatient real quick. I don't want any fucking roots. Just give me a tree already. But I'm reminded so much of those words, and I'm pulled back to them time and time again. And every time I return to them, I find something else. There is a simplicity in the statement, but there's a richness too. Trees grow based on the roots. And you can even use the word intention in place of roots, right? So there's like, this is not just about flora and fauna. This is about the way we start things, the initiating energy or intention that we put into what it is we do. And something that I'm mused about again in this more private group and in a very personal way is that you can't undo your roots. You can't undo them. whatever your roots are, however you grew up, whoever your crazy people are, that crazy pod of psychopaths from which you erupted into the world, you can't undo that. You can't undo it. You can you can cut the umbilical cord. You can move on. You can move away. You can deny it. You can also heal your roots if they've been painful for you, but you cannot undo them. The roots are always there with you. And something I was musing on in this group was that I think our roots have a song to them. They sing a song, and I was kind of imagining this almost like Sirens on the Rock. I was thinking of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and this kind of idea of the song that sings you back into being. That you might even have to meet obstacle or die back into being to reconnect with your roots. The inevitable pull of home, the inevitable pull of where you came from, the people you came from. I use this term a lot in videos. Your basic ground, which is what one man I really love his work, Richard Idemon, calls the basic ground is like this collage of your family myths, collective myths, social myths, and then your own personal myths that you've made out of this entire experience. This is our basic ground. This is maybe not the root itself, but it's the fertile patch of ground in which roots take hold. But you can't undo the roots. You can walk away from them from a time. You can deny they ever existed. You can try to cast off the crazy in your roots. You can do a lot of things, but you can't undo them. And this is one of the reasons, this is a new moon. New moons are about beginnings. They are about endings and beginnings. We're in this weird, dark vestibule where there's no light, there's no way forward, there's no path. We can't see at a new moon. That's the magic of the moon. It's reborn in darkness. That death and rebirth happen in darkness. That somehow in the shadow of life, things transform, or one of my favorite words, transmogrified somehow. So we're in this dark vestibule where something has closed and ended. Something is yet to fully take form, but there's an impulse, there's an instinct that's probably there. And there are these new little bits of root that aim at a new moon to take hold, to find rooting, to go slightly deeper. And even, as always, I'm off on tangents, but I wanted to read you guys this quote from my favorite place, Lapham's Quarterly. This is probably where all the Patreon money will go. But I found this really moving. Quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Lapham's Quarterly, for those who don't know, is just like, it's a stunning collection of poetry, art, quotes, essays, literature, and excerpts of over the past couple thousand of years of human history. And they take a topic and they kind of break it down, and we'll collect, something from Virginia Woolf and then something from Ovid and then back and forth again. And it's just something stunning. So anyway, something to check out. It's like, for me, it's indispensable. The quote is, "Our life is an apprenticeship to the truth that around every circle another can be drawn." I like that anyway. The truth is here, and like everything else orbits and is circled around it. "There is no end in nature, but every end is a beginning, and under every deep, a lower deep opens." I love it. I love it. I mean, just again, to me, this is like perfect new moon quote. I mean, everything in nature is not just an end, it's a beginning. That's perfect synonymous suggestion for what a new moon is. It's the swinging of this door between two spaces that are kind of like, in ancient Greek myth, quite often creation happens in the dark void, the fertile, rich, dark void. It's not the same as emptiness. It's as of yet unvoid. It's fertile and ripe for gestation. It's ripe for creation. This is one of the ancient goddesses, Nyx, N-Y-X, night. And these are the kinds of things I'm thinking. And when I think of, I just love this thought, under every deep, a lower deep opens. That's kind of what I think about this new moon in a way, because here we are, it's new moon in Virgo. At the outset, it's like a grounded, pragmatic sign. It is not overly emotional. It's quite steady and rooted itself. But it's a new moon. We're in the dark corridor. We don't yet have light enough to see a path. A rebirth is happening, but it's going to happen in darkness and probably beyond the grasp of our conscious knowing. It's probably going to swing in very quietly through the back door. So whatever deep you feel at the new moon in Virgo, I want to suggest there's a lower deep. And I want to suggest the lower deep is roots. And it's a story about roots. And it's like if we're in this place that we can't see where we're headed, because we're in the dark, new moon, and if we can't see where we're headed clearly, moon opposite Neptune, quite foggy, misty, I'll get more into that, we can at least remember our roots. We can at least remember our intention. And that might take you back only a couple weeks ago to a different moon. That might take you back, looking at the part of your chart ruled by Virgo, to something that you know is bubbling up in that part of your life. Or it might take you back to some real base roots, origin stories, family. Where do I come from? And good, bad, and different, however you're feeling about yourself or your life, or if indeed it's the inclination is to think about our roots and retract, you are the tree that's grown from those roots. Trees grow based on the roots. You are that tree that grew from those roots, that you are the product. And, I also think something, Virgo is a sign that's it doesn't get a lot of love. Either because, people say it's nitpicky, or it's a worrywart, or it's just concerned with doing, working, not really sexy stuff, right? And some of that stuff is true. You're going to get a strong worker bee tendency in Virgo. But there's a lot that gets ignored with Virgo too. One of the things that gets ignored is that Virgo, like Taurus and like Capricorn, is an earth sign. It still has organic wisdom like the other ones do. And it would be simple enough to just say that Virgo is about self-improvement and betterment, and therefore this moon is about self-improvement and betterment. But what I think is one of the most shining, impressive parts of Virgo as an archetypal personality is that they do not faff about wasting time about what went wrong, or pointing fingers, or deciding who's to blame, and getting stuck into a lot of gossip. That's for my Gemini friends. No, love y'all, love standing around the water cooler with y'all. Virgo kind of eschews all that stuff. It's kind of like, well, that's not really worth my time. That's not going to be an effective use of energy and time right now. What we need to do is cut off the weird waste of emotional energy and direct it into what's going to be effective, and that's going to change this situation, because Virgo's very often led and directed by output or ROI. One of the inborn reasons that we do not think about, the reason why Virgo can be that way, it has the organic earthly wisdom of, look, there was a root. There was a root to this situation. The roots have gotten us here. Roots cannot be wrong, but they can be bettered. And they can be taken care of. They can be curated. They can be cut back if they need to be. There can be some acts of precision that better this situation. But the roots themselves cannot be wrong, because the earth doesn't screw up. The earth makes everything as it should, and everything in the earthly process gets used and recycled and then turned into different matter and then used by this animal and then carried to this flower. And that's what Virgo really wants to do. It kind of wants to get stuck in and say, all right, well, this person is a waste of energy here. Let's move you to this team. That's not going to work out. So why don't we take all the energy and time that's here and shift it over there? That's how it manifests in a very 2D mundane reality. But the organic wisdom is there, that the roots are never wrong. The roots are never wrong. They can be improved upon, but the roots themselves are valid just for being. That's everything starts somewhere. So that's what I'm thinking about roots. So getting stuck into other parts of this chart and other stuff that's here. Moon is sextile Jupiter, trine to Pluto, opposite Neptune. So this is a funny little situation. Moon opposite Neptune, pretty tight aspect, is a funny one because, again, Moon in Virgo, very precise, detailed, poised, grounded, effective, especially, it's a sign ruled by Mercury, which is the rational, logic use of brain and communique. Very, linear in the way it goes about doing things. And here we have on the opposite side Neptune in Pisces, which is like a mist, a fog. It's full of illusion and inspiration and diffuse perception and things that are unclear. It's like, it's just a funny mix for a new moon in Virgo, this ultra precise, like desperate to find and attain more and more precision moon, is opposed by Neptune in Pisces, which is like, feels. So there can be a sense of being unclear. There can be a sense of, I think there's always a bit of that at a new moon, because again, new moons happen in darkness. We don't have the light yet. There is a very different feeling at a new moon, which is more insular and kind of hunched, than a full moon, which is kind of out there and, on display. And there's a couple things here that I want to bring your attention to. One is that, in general, yes, there could be a feeling of things being unclear. And that's going to be probably more emotional, because Mercury in this chart, which is more of our mind, and again, this rational process, is in very good position. Out of the recent shadow of Mercury retrograde in Leo, which it switched over around September 1st. In Virgo, one of its home signs and its sign of exaltation, making a really nice aspect to Jupiter, which takes the little, Mercury and Jupiter, when they're in good aspect together, it's kind of like I take the bits and I take the big chunks and I can mash them into really good use. It's like having a book that's really well written, that has chapters and outlines or something. It's like, again, or another way to say it is Mercury's microscope, Jupiter's telescope. So it's like we're seeing through like this dual vision, bicameral vision type thing, and we're able to take the lessons and the stuff from both of them and put them into good use. This is also Mercury, which is more learned and irrational, and Jupiter, which is more wise and somewhat inspired or spiritual. So Mercury's in good nick. He's having a good time. He even just got out of a recent conjunction with Pallas Athena, which is similar to Mercury, but complementary in that it's kind of left brain meets right brain, great melding of creative and strategic and rational and inspired energies. So I don't think it's going to be a thinking problem. I think it's going to be a feeling, not problem, wobble, like a sense of, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know what's going on with this. I don't know if this is the right thing or not. That's going to be the feeling. And one thing, again, I kind of want to give you an idea to think about with Neptune is there's illusion in Neptune. Things aren't clear. It can sometimes talk about being deceived or betrayed in some way. One of the things that Liz Green talks about in her brilliant book, The Book of Neptune, is the idea from the fall from grace, because Neptune is, in many senses, what is ideal, what's perfect. And it's the dream of the ideal or the perfect, because in reality, in human life, perfection doesn't exist. Not in people, not in situations, not in relationships. No matter where you try to stake it, try to stab the trident of Neptune down and say, this is the thing, this is perfect, this is going to be amazing. It's things fall apart. That's the nature of being. And the more we take a perfect projection and we try to live with it, the more we take a symbol, which needs to just be expressed as an archetype or a symbol out in the world, and we try to bring it home to us, we collapse the symbol. We collapse what's perfect or ideal or illusory. It's the same kind of thing that happens in, I sound so cynical. It's the same thing that happens like when we go from dating somebody to living with them full time. We could have a very Neptunian, Venusian relationship when we're just dating and, oh my God, he's perfect and he's amazing. And it takes about 48 hours once you move in together to say, I can't believe, he has this, he or she, fair enough, has this habit or this thing or this inclination. Because we had the ideal, the perfect, the projection, and once you get real with it and you live with the projection has to die. Something else has to take its place. Another thing to think about with Neptune and Moon opposite Neptune is this is rife for projection. Some people I always envision Neptune primarily as a mist or a fog that rolls in, and that the haziness makes it very hard to articulate things or know how you feel or in fact effectively see, hence why deceptions and betrayals can come in more easily than at other times. But some people talk about Neptune in a very water-based way, which is sensible because Neptune, aka Poseidon, has very watery origins. And in so much of the water, I think about the reflection of water and what it mirrors back to us. And sometimes I think, like water, if it moves in any way at all, does not make a great mirror. It's illusory and it's dynamic and it's inspirational, and we feel greatly healed and touched by being around bodies of water. Hence why holidays the world over are based on spending time at large bodies of water, whether it's a lake or a beach or what have you. But it's not a great mirror. You can't effectively use it in a mirror unless there's absolutely nothing going on at all. So just be aware that the things that are being mirrored back to you right now are probably not clear, are probably not accurate, that the waters of Neptune can seem deceptively real, but what they reflect back to us as way of projection is not usually totally on point. Moving on. Grand Earth Trine, similar to a couple weeks ago when there was, I think, full moon in Pisces, and there were, great big watery full moon, but this great Grand Earth Trine sitting in the background. We've got another one. So that's another reason why I'm kind of pumped for this full moon. There's some little sticky wickets stuck around this chart, but I think the groundedness of Virgo topped up with another Grand Earth Trine, a very supportive linking of planets that are in Earth signs, is another reason to feel like you've got pretty good backbone here. You're going to have the support to get in touch with the roots, to re-examine the roots, to put them down further, and to feel more comfortable about them. And then the Grand Earth Trine is formatted from Pallas Athena in early degrees of Virgo, Saturn early degrees of Cap, and Uranus in early degrees of Taurus. So between those spaces, there's something that's really helpful and easily kind of bouncing around. And I think it's going to feel like insight, breakthrough, stability, like, Saturn Uranus is like making a change and doing it in a stable way with all the right steps in place. Pallas Uranus is like, God, it feels like inspiration station. There's just like, doo, 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 your mind bite, get the paper out, guys, like take notes, write stuff down at this new moon if you've got stuff around early degrees of earth signs, because it could be that you really feel like the lights come on, and there's a lot of creative breakthroughs happening. And then again, Pallas to Saturn, I really think about strategy. Creativity meets strategy, the artist meets up with the colonel. You know, it's kind of like there's this great marriage of abilities that's happening and flowing across the chart really, really well. So that's something to know too. And I think the moon's sextile to Jupiter and the trine to Pluto, there is change promised in this chart, and expansion, transformation. I guess my sense is just still going back to the roots. Like, how are you feeling about the roots? What are you intending? What's the plan? What's informing? Like, what little seed baby are you plopping down? Because you can't undo the roots. The roots are always with you. Last thing, before I call it a day and leave y'all to ruminate on this most pleasant new moon Virgo, is that we have what's called a kite formation. And a kite is when two planets are in opposition. That planet at the top has two sextiles, and it kind of just forms this little kite. So the kite, the top of the kite is Venus in Scorpio. Newly entered in Scorpio by the time of this new full moon, by the time of this new moon, and Venus is at the top of the kite, opposite Uranus. Venus is also loosely sextiling Pallas, loosely sextiling Saturn. And Venus-Uranus is one of the core aspects of the Venus retrograde upcoming, again, for the one for which I've done a download, and I hope you'll join me on doing that, because I think it's going to be really interesting. But it's one of the core aspects. There's essentially 3 Venus-Uranus oppositions. And actually, let me give you the dates so you have them, my dearest friends. As always, I've got like piles of stuff I pieced through in the recordings. How charming. So first one is September 12th. Second one is October 31st. Samhain, All Hallows Eve. And the last one is November 30th. So there's one before the Venus retrograde, there's one during it, and there's one after. And this is what I always pay attention to, and what when I've written these types of articles for Astrology.com, I did write about Venus retrograde for Astrology.com. I'll also link that below. This is exactly what I'm looking for. You know, I'm always looking at like what sign is Venus going to be, what is the station dates, what are the shadow periods, and it's the core is really what sign is a planet going to be retrograde in? Is it a singular sign? Is it moving across 2 different signs? What's the natural relationship between those signs? What does it feel like for that particular planet to transgress again across those 2 signs? But what I'm really looking for, and what really flavors a retrograde for me with planets like Venus, Mercury, and Mars, is the aspects that will happen as a product of the retrograde. And this is one of them. There's 2 in Venus retrograde, Venus square the nodes and Venus opposite Uranus. Both are kind of bumpy, and they speak about big changes, big shifts, forks in the road. This is not a complacent transit, that's for sure. Not to mention Venus in Scorpio partially will be drumming up intensity and depth out of this. But Venus opposite Uranus, which is live in this new moon in Virgo chart for September 9th, but will perfect September 12th, breaks, breakthroughs, unexpected occurrences. Now, Venus opposite Uranus can drum up a hottie on a moment's notice. It is the piercing like pang of Cupid's arrow as it hits you in the back and you go, oh, hi, Brad. You know, it's head over heels type stuff. If you've got Venus, Uranus in your chart or in synastry formation with somebody that you're in relationship with, there is no, it's very, it's like black, it's kind of black and white. The love experience is like, wham, in love, or no. And the tendency with Venus, Uranus, period, is that things happen very quickly, they rip open very quickly, they burn down very, very quickly. So expect breakthroughs, breakdowns, upsets, turbulence, little bits of it could be something just like jagged appearing at the edge of your awareness, or it could be a full-on shock if this hits your chart in a really intense way. Again, it's really telling that this is not a one-time occurrence. This will happen 3 times throughout the Venus retrograde. And that's the last thing I really wanted to touch on there, because it's going to be an increasingly important aspect, and we are just getting the first hints of it at this new moon. So that's it for now, woo lovers. Lots of love to you. Hope to see you either on the blog, on the Facebook pages, on Patreon, wherever you want to hang out and be in community. And I will speak to you guys soon. Lots of love. Bye.